Do we have any need for executive session, which I believe we've got one legal?
I've got three. One is legal, which will be the continuation of our discussion on the Burdett Fund litigation tentative settlement. We can discuss it briefly before we go into executive session. We have two personnel matters, one regarding sewer department staff and the other regarding town report dedications.
Anybody else have anything? A motion?
I'll make a motion.
Second?
Second.
Motion made and seconded. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Do we need to amend the agenda this evening?
Only, as we discussed, we've got those two matters of old business, which I think you had agreed to table till
That
February
was on
6th, until Hank could be present.
That's for on the, we're going to do that on
The winter road
The winter
maintenance
road.
and the salt and sand
Yeah.
mixture.
policy. Number 4.
I wanted to make one announcement that's not on the agenda.
Oh, okay.
That's okay. It will only take a couple minutes.
You want to do that next week?
When you get done, before you get going on the meeting, whatever.
Nope, go ahead, we're all set. To amend the agenda, or to adopt the agenda.
Okay.
All in favor of the agenda as amended?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Carried. David, you had something?
Yeah, I just wanted to make a public announcement for the camera that I have decided not to run for re-election. I'm up for re-election this year for the select board, and I've had my 4 years, and it's time to step aside and let some new blood come in, my feeling. So the person that has decided to run in my spot is David Mills from Florence, and I ask my supporters to throw their support towards him. So I thank you all for supporting me in the 4 years that I've been here, and it's been a pleasure to work with the the select board and the town manager, and thank you for everyone supporting me.
Thank you for your service.
Yep.
Absolutely.
Okay. We need to act on the select board minutes of January 2nd. Is there any corrections or additions? John?
I hope those are what I think they are, John. Quite enough for everyone. Need help with that? Need help with that? Need help with that?
We've got several orders tonight. We've got the originals, which is on your original packet. Any questions on the orders?
I probably should know the answer to this, but the highway inventory grant was $6,734. What was that all about?
Yeah. The Regional Planning Commission worked with the town to perform an inventory of all hydrologically connected segments of road. That means roads near water. Because the state is all concerned now, it's almost all consuming, with the water quality of Lake Champlain and the rivers and streams that feed into it. And so the state provided grants to all towns, or almost all towns who applied for them, to hire contractors or vendors like the Rutland Regional Planning Commission to assist our highway crew in doing these inventories. Now that that project is done, it's time for us to pay the contractor, and then it's time for us to collect that money from the state who awarded that grant. So it's an inventory process that the highway crew did together with the Regional Planning Commission, for which we will be reimbursed by the state.
Now, as a result of that, will there be recommendations that's handed to the town on things we have to do?
No, but it's a prioritization list of worst stretches of road to better stretches. It's kind of a planning tool that the state hopes the highway crews around the state will use to address the most critical problem roads first, and then work down the list. Just like we have done in asset inventories, which identify parts and pieces and physical assets that need to be replaced over time in kind of an organized, scheduled way.
So I know we're just seeing the tip of the iceberg as far as controls and regulations on water quality. That's coming at us along with other things.
Yep. And each year we'll be paying a highway permit fee to the state, and each year I'm sure we'll have to do some sort of reporting about what kind of progress we're making tackling these problem roads.
Thanks.
Yep.
Any other questions?
I got some sign here.
Just one more, Joe. Okay. That one. That's for the flowers. That's tonight's, what was in tonight's packet?
This one here.
Yeah.
Probably got some more.
Well, that's it for right now.
Payroll,
We got payroll, that's
Payroll,
true.
yeah.
usually.
Getting ahead of me, Joe.
We're not shut down like the government, are we?
No, no,
They're all gonna get paid in the end though, anyway.
They're gonna be awful hungry if it goes on for a year, though.
Just the one.
I know, yes.
I see they're setting up a soup kitchen not too far from the Capitol down there.
Is that right?
For federal employees.
The mayor's report.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The next meeting of the Select Board will take place on Wednesday, February 6th, 3 weeks from tonight. Therefore, we may need Select Board signatures before then on time-sensitive orders. If that's the case, we'll be in touch with everybody as we have done in the past. A tax sale relating to the Flanders parcel took place on Friday, January 4th at 1 o'clock here at the Town Office Conference Room. Richard and Patricia Schiller were the successful bidders at $2,100. The Flanders still have 1 year from the date of the tax sale in which to redeem their property. There will be a staff meeting on Thursday, January 24th at 9 o'clock. As always, the Select Board members are welcome to attend. The next meeting of the OMIA Issues Team will take place on the evening of Thursday, February 7th. Please let me know before then if there are any topics which you would like for me to raise with our friends at OMIA. I've been asked, Mr. Chairman, whether the Select Board's in a position yet to decide on a date for Pittsford Day. And if we wanted to do mid-August, as we have in the past, those Saturdays would be Saturday, August 10, 17, or 24th. Do you all have a preference?
I think if we went with sort of last year's would be the 17th.
Yeah, that's in the middle of the
I
month.
was going to bring that up because I had a question for
Okay.
myself.
And I think,
From Omea.
yes, they might be wanting to
That
host
was
the
in
band.
Yeah.
Yeah, Brandy actually asked me on behalf of the rec area.
Yeah, okay.
Is that agreeable with everybody, the 17th?
17th, that's a Saturday.
Yep, good. The town newsletter deadline is January 20th, and we expect those newsletters to be mailed out in early February, so stay tuned for those. The highway crew finally took possession of repaired truck number 5 today, which is good. It's been a while. And I should let you know that a Casella truck carrying an excavator clipped the town's wood chipper along Fire Hill Road near the Hogback Quarry entrance yesterday. Luckily, nobody was injured, and the chipper sustained only minor damage, tire and a fender. Casella's has accepted responsibility. Once we determine our damages, we'll notify Casella, and they stand ready to pay the claim.
Good. Anybody got anything with town manager?
I got two things, John, I wanted to ask you. I see in the packet, you addressed the dump sticker issues that we've building up down there. The last 2-3 times that I've been down, I've been bombarded by the fact that we're not selling dump stickers at the 2 neighboring stores, Keys 2 and Kamuta's. And I guess we're just trying to deal with it by selling them in-house in the town office, or so that's the only, other than bringing a check, which you can purchase them at the dump or at the transfer station by check only, no cash, correct?
Yeah, we've always sold them here at the town offices. The decision to go to those 2 stores and ask for their help in selling stickers off hours was because some people would go to the transfer station like on a Wednesday and only have cash, and that was a way, even on Saturday, that was a way for them to be sent up to a place that was open and that would accept cash. We've been told by our auditors we shouldn't have any cash transactions at a transfer station. Nothing about this particular transfer station, that's just their blanket advice to all of their towns that they audit. It's just to remove any sort of temptation. And so we have heard from people who sometimes head down there, they don't have a check in hand, and they haven't thought maybe ahead to buy them at the town offices. But ultimately, if they have a check, they can do it at the transfer station, just like they can at the town offices. And as the handout points out, if people are having trouble maybe putting their hands on a check, they can make a transaction over the phone with a credit or debit card, and the town clerk will accept that and mail them a punch card. Similarly, if people want to dump off in an envelope a payment to the town offices telling us what they want to do with their money, we will send them a transfer station punch card. And I think the other option was simply to come at any time beforehand and buy them from the clerk's office. So we tried to give people several options. Maybe they're not as convenient as going up to Keith's or Kamuta's.
Some people might not know that the office is open on.
Well, that's what I was going to mention too, because I didn't know until you told me.
Yeah, they're open every Thursday night till 6 o'clock.
6,
That's
so
right.
That's if people are working, can't get in. That's
Yeah.
one reason we stay open that one night.
So we'll see if that seems to satisfy folks, and if not, perhaps we'll have to revisit the issue and do something more.
But there was a problem, that's why we stopped.
There was a problem at one of the 2 stores, and we wanted also to relieve them of the burden of having to do this for us, because they weren't getting paid for that.
Right. The other thing I was going to bring up with the, and I don't know if you know an answer to this, if there is one, but with this upcoming cold weather that we're supposed to be experiencing for a while, do we have anyone in town that you're aware of that needs assistance of some sort, like housing? I don't, you hear about it in the bigger cities, Burlington. I just never known of anyone in the town of Pittsford. But
I have served as the town service officer, and I can count on maybe one hand the number of times people have had trouble and needed emergency help, but they really haven't had to do with the weather, but maybe domestic abuse situations where they needed to get out in a hurry, and we would do a one-night stay at a hotel and get reimbursed from the state. There is a program from the Bowen Walker Fund that will help people with utility bills, I think, and that might also spill over into emergency fuel deliveries. So that might be an option for people. Otherwise, there's plenty of state agencies that folks can reach out to. But those would be the best ideas I have.
The state took all of that help away from the town years ago.
Really?
Well, we used to have our town poor master.
That's
Chicago.
Yeah, you're right.
Anybody in town needed help, they went to see him, and he did whatever he could and what was appropriate. But that's been many years now. The state just took that over. They got a big office down in Rutland, and you've got to go through their hoops. And they've got all kinds of caseworkers, and they've made a big business out of it.
Gotcha.
The food shelf is probably a good resource
Another-
for understanding who's in need.
Oh, yeah.
There's all sorts of help available, but it might not be right here
They
in
know
town.
who the vulnerable people are.
Yeah, they do, yeah.
Yep, good point.
Do you have any public comment tonight?
Yes.
Yes.
I recently submitted a complaint letter to Governor Scott on a wide range of issues while copying Secretary of State condos and Attorney General Donovan. After conducting a thorough review of my concerns for nearly a month, his response with regards to the matter of Hubbardton Road is as follows. Our understanding is the road has now been closed to regular passage and deconstructed to a service level similar to the prior condition. While this appears to have mitigated your principal concerns, it's understandable the frustration, time, and resources of the community which were required to achieve this outcome were significant. The governor has obviously been misinformed on a life-threatening situation. How this level of misunderstanding can occur at the highest level of government should be disconcerting to all of us. I'm here tonight to get your input, your response, because we know the road is not being deconstructed or closed. Now, who made that up? I intend to follow through.
This board did.
I haven't heard from the governor's office.
Kelly, I would like as close to this, what I read, to be published, because I intend to follow it up.
As far as I know, Joe, that road has been a class 4 and has remained a class 4.
I believe that road is a class 4 road.
I do so.
I don't think it's ever been changed.
Read the governor's comment. Deconstructed as it was before. Again, I sent a 7-page letter with a lot of issues, and that was, the safety was the most important one. And he has made recommendation, I'm following through with other recommendations as well. But the statement, he knows precisely how the road was, what it became, and it says it's like it was before. It is not. It was a dead-end road with dead-end sign on both ends. We all know that. And I want your comments, and I will be following it through. And I have got all kinds of channels, because Governor Scott is Chief Executive Officer of our state. He cannot be making a statement like that. Somebody wrote it for him, and that person should be held accountable.
Do we have a copy of this
See it
letter?
through.
I've never seen
never
it,
seen it.
never heard from the governor.
We haven't heard from the governor. Do you have a copy of the letter?
It's right, he's excerpted here, what the
Yeah,
passage
this is
is.
the portion. If you want
I'd
the
like
whole
to see the
letter, I'm
entire
sure
letter.
you can get it. But that's a matter, I wrote it to governor, I'm dealing with secretary condos, I'm dealing with Donovan, so I'm working through it. We have, Joe, you and I, since the last time I was here, we spent 11 hours together, twice at our place.
Is that right?
8 hours, 2 phone calls.
We did a lot of
Would
visiting.
you like to share some of the things you and I talked about? You said to come here, you will support me, go ahead.
I met with you at your house, and we had a great visit about, we covered town history and everything else, and we covered the Hubbardton Road. And my feeling on that Hubbardton Road is it's a Class 4 road. It never has been changed. It's never been upgraded or towed up. Can't say that I've been over that road many times in my whole lifetime, although I lived here in town my whole life, because I've never had any need to. I believe that road has been passable all these years. Maybe not very good shape, but I don't believe that road was ever barricaded or blocked off, because it's a Class 4 road.
Joe,
And
you
the
and I
rest of
talked
that
about a
road,
lot of other issues.
the rest-
Specifically,
they went up there and they did some improvements to it, basically, to get, if there was a need for a fire truck to go through there or an ambulance to go through there, so that they could get through there without tearing their equipment all apart. The road, they put a lot of hours in it, and they've done a whole bunch of different things because of the controversy that came from their improvements. It's still a Class 4 road as far as I know, and it doesn't exceed the Class 4 road specifications that I know of. Maybe you've got a different opinion, but
Joe, you and I spent 11
right.
hours. You invited me, you said to come in, you'll support me. We talked about a lot of things. Go ahead.
I feel as though that road has to stay as a Class 4 road unless it's closed. And that can be done, but only through certain methods of hearings and documents. And until that road is thrown up, if I believe that's the proper word, it remains a Class 4 road. And if deer hunters want to go through there, or anybody, I've passed through there once, only once since this controversy started.
I'm not
got some
here to
questions.
argue.
I'm gonna give this about 2 more minutes.
I'm asking you to look at the statement. Do you agree with it or disagree with it? Has it been deconstructed to the prior level?
We haven't destructed anything. They're not deconstructed. We have
You
not.
constructed it. You put
haven't
in
deconstructed it.
48% of town of Pittsford gravel, annual gravel, to build that road.
We've discussed this, well, I don't know how many times. You can do what you want. If you want to take and get an attorney to do whatever you want to do, that is your prerogative. I don't care.
Doing what you
You're-
need to do.
Whatever you need to do,
Pittsford,
you
not
can do
family.
it. You can do it. That's going to stay Class 4 road as long as this board sits here, as far as I know. So, and as far as the governor, I don't think he has anything to do with the Pittsford Town roads. You can say all he wants,
I'm
but I don't believe he
asking the
does.
question, the statement that the governor is making.
I don't know how he can make a statement when he's not aware of it. How can he make a statement on a Pittsford road? I don't
He
understand
had a
that.
whole team, including V-Trans. They studied it, they analyzed it, and this is part of the statement.
But nothing's been done as far as
Nothing's
what
been
he's
done.
saying. It's still the same as it
Still the same,
was
yes.
when the
When I
town
was-
reconstructed
Right.
it last year.
Well,
When they reconstructed it last year.
Right.
right.
Right. That's my point.
And-
The last thing I know of the town did was we tried to put in some bars to make some divots in there. That I think 3 or
And
4 of those.
signage.
And signage.
Yeah.
That's the last thing that's been done to that road as far as I'm aware of.
But just
Nothing
to, just to update the record too, as far as the timetable, I can't remember, but I think that the board members that are here, with the exception of Alicia, because she wasn't on the board at that time, at the time, Highway Foreman Sean Erickson came to the board, and he asked us, with the construction of the box culvert at Teresa Forest, there was gonna be some excess fill.
Right.
And he asked to dump 3 or 4 loads up in there so they could get through with a grader rather than drive all the way
And
around.
plow and stuff, too. We're not gonna get into that tonight.
I'm not either. I don't, that's
Because
not my...
it's a 5-minute discussion, it's not on the agenda, if it's on the agenda, we'll do it.
Yeah.
But tonight, we've got too much to do, we're gonna stick to our agenda, and that's it. We'll take your letter, your advisement.
But as far as that letter goes, nothing's been
There's
done.
nothing
with
like
that.
that, no, absolutely not. We haven't touched it.
It's the same as that
Since
was.
last year, I'm aware of, we haven't done anything to it.
They've clarified, nothing has been done since the road was constructed and opened up.
Correct.
That's what you mean.
Correct.
Right.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, that's what I'm aware of. Okay, we're going to new business, and I believe we've got a gentleman here.
Oh, yeah, we do. John Kiernan is here. We have several visitors, obviously, but
Oh,
John
yeah.
Kiernan's here to talk
take it,
about
yes.
the sewer project, which, broadly speaking, consists of consolidating and replacing the 2 Depot Street pump stations with a single pump station to be located at the transfer station, the installation of some new forced main up the hill to handle the flow until it gets to our main line on Route 7, and some instrumentation upgrades to make the oxygenation of the biological processes at the plant more efficient and hopefully more energy efficient as well. And John has been hired by the Water and Sewer Commission many months ago to begin work on designing this project and developing cost estimates so that we can go toward a bond vote to hopefully get the project done this summer and fall. And without further ado, I think I should introduce John Kiernan from Otter Creek Engineering to tell us about what he's been doing with the Water and Sewer Commission and with his design and what he hopes the Select Board will do in terms of supporting the bond vote.
Welcome, John.
Hi. I also have brought chocolate chip cookies.
That's always a good move, John.
Is that called Wow.
Oh, there's a note here that says it's
You must right there back. I bet his wife made one.
Well, John says he
Very
can.
good. Yep. Very good.
Tastes like more already.
John, would you like to satisfy your friends in the audience with a few?
Absolutely.
Sure. They look hungry. That's right.
So, my name is John Kiernan. I'm an engineer at Otter Creek Engineering. I'm here to just give a recommendation for a cost opinion for a bond vote that's coming up in March. We are working with a couple of different funding agencies. Unfortunately, USDA Rural Development is on furlough right now, and they actually went on furlough the day of the funding application due date. So we submitted that on December 21st and haven't heard a word, and we don't expect to for any time soon. We also have a request in and are getting funding for the design of the project through the State Revolving Loan Fund, and they have available funds for the construction of the project. So we have provided a cost opinion of it's $970,000 for the construction of 1 pump station at the base of Depot Hill Road, where the town garage site is.
No, that's a mistake. That is frequent throughout your report. It says town garage. That's our transfer station.
I apologize.
No problem.
And to consolidate 2 pump stations, and then the work also at the treatment plant. So the pump stations, the upper pump station, which is halfway down the road, it's about a quarter mile from Route 7, was built in the late 60s. I believe there were some improvements in 1990 to the mechanical equipment, but the structures themselves are still steel, and they're steel structures built in the 60s. They probably have exhausted their useful life, and they also have some other deficiencies, such as it's a dry pit pump station, which requires confined space entry to enter the station for any maintenance. So there's just, and it's just at a point in time where you have to look at replacement. Looking at the land that's available at that location in order to construct a new pump station at that location would be pretty difficult, and it would require bypass pumping, so there'd be a large cost associated with having to actually bring in temporary equipment in order to transfer the existing sewage as you're rebuilding the pump station. The lower pump station at the transfer station site was built in 1990 to satisfy the Pittsford Common Area and JRs. That was built as a private pump station and then turned over to the town. So the town actually doesn't have any record of what is there. We don't know what the pump models are, what the capacities or anything. So what we did is we did what's called a present worth analysis with the assumption that both of the pump stations will need to be replaced at some point in the next 5 years. And we did a cost estimate over a 60-year period, taking into account that over that period, the stations would have additional replacement or maintenance costs related. And as it turns out, not only with the items like the bypass pumping and others, we did determine that both the capital cost of replacing the station at the base for both, as well as a 60-year design cost going forward, would be advantageous to consolidate at the base. There is going to be some additional pumping costs because you're actually going down the hill and having to pump it back up. But I think the town understands that and would recognize the benefit of that. Actually having one pump station to maintain would be much more advantageous that way. Regardless, at the treatment plant site, that system is a proprietary called secondary treatment, where you add oxygen and you basically consuming the waste that's there. Right now, the largest energy unit there, aeration blowers that are actually adding air to the process, are just pumping as high as much as they can, even though your flow is going up and down. And so what the manufacturer has actually proposed and has provided some pricing to put together kind of a control system that would monitor the actual oxygen in the tank itself, and it would ramp down and lower the amount of air that they'd have to blow. So that would save costs over time. So all said and done, in order to construct the consolidated pump station, we would need to, that's about $250,000 to $300,000 for a pump station, and we would also have to extend sewer line down to the new station and then replace the force main. In our scope of work, we've identified a replacement up to the Route 7 intersection. There is an additional 700 feet in Route 7 that should be replaced, but you do have a looming construction project dealing with the Segment 2 project, and our intent, at least at this point, is to replace up to the Route 7 intersection and then have that be as part of that project in the future. So, all said, the pump station is in the range of $250,000 to $300,000. The collection system and pump station and force mains are around at $200,000, and the work at the treatment plant is about $100,000. So that turns out to be about $600,000 to $650,000, and then you have engineering services and other related legal and admin type work, and that brought the project costs up to $170,000.
any federal funding or state funding?
Yeah, so we've put together 5 particular options related to, the state has a program where they provide a 0% loan over a 20-year period. They do impose a 2% administrative fee, so that's like a 2% loan over 20 years. And that, would be probably the highest option. And then there's also an item where you can run out, that's a 20-year loan. They do have an option to extend the loan out 30 years. That is something that you might want to consider hardly, because in 20 years, there may be some improvements that you need to deal with, and you don't want to be paying stuff that you're replacing. Rural Development has another grant and loan program that is based on a number of economic factors, median household income and size of the system and other items, and they basically provide a grant and loan package. Both of these funding agencies, pretty much they meet on a quarterly basis, and I'm not saying it's collusion, but they kind of identify who's going to fund who, and usually the funding packages end up to be relatively similar. And it is also based on the final end user costs. So, having a fairly large increase, I mean, we're talking about anywhere between 15 and 30% increase potentially in the user rate for this project alone. With the additional work on Route 7, which would be probably a much higher, would be similar or much higher impact on that. Having those issues in play may provide some help to get some additional funding.
And Rural Development is the outfit that we used for our water and sewer upgrades 8 and 10 years ago.
Yeah.
And they're the ones who are on furlough right now. Can't answer
Right.
questions about what they can do for us.
But and usually when they fund a project and they fund a town system, they usually are very happy to do that again. So they usually like to develop relationships.
This system that you are recommending putting together, does it allow for any additional capacity or growth that might come along in the future if there were any? Or is it basically just to handle our needs as they are right today?
Well, the stations themselves, at least the one station that we would do, the capacity, the size of the pumps are not going to be based on the actual, demand of flow from people flushing toilets. It's really a matter of how much water you can send through the line to make sure that you don't settle the solids. So the capacity will be there for additional growth. And one of the other, we can't, when we deal with funding agencies, they don't want to fund growth, so we can't state it specifically, but by providing the pump station at the lower end, there you do have the capability potentially in the future of looking at this area along Pine Woods Road and Toronto Road that possibly could end up there. You could possibly provide sewer service in the future.
In terms of the growth question, Joe, John's partner, Mark Youngstrom, did an analysis where we demonstrated that after recent upgrades to the plant, we do have a significant capacity for more customers. That's why we're hoping to hear from the Academy one day about possibly hooking in.
Well, I would, the reason I raised the question is because I would hate to think that we would put in a project like this and then find out in 10 years that we should have done it with more capacity.
Right. Yeah, I don't believe that would be the case. The pumps would be sized for that. I do want to say this is a replacement of existing pumping equipment.
Right.
The town does have an issue with infiltration in the system, where the flows after a rainstorm do kind of rise. It's very directly related, and providing investment in upgrading or sealing or doing some type of pipelining or something like that to reduce the infiltration would definitely be advantageous. But just like I need to replace my roof, but I also need to replace a couple of things that are more pressing at the time. I think the intent right now is to identify mechanical equipment, which if fails, the consequences of that are much greater.
With the sewer upgrade of a few years ago, we replaced a pump station on Elm Street, which was a big infiltration source, and we relined the pipelines on Arch Street and either Mechanic or Pleasant, or maybe both. So there's been progress.
We've spent quite a lot of money on trying to get the infiltration out of our system, and we need to not let off on that. That needs to be a big part of any project. But I may be wrong, but I'm getting the idea you're not telling us what to do to cut out infiltration. You're working on these pump stations. That's your project, right?
That's right. I mean, none of the work that we're proposing, we're basically extending new sewer that is not going to, we're not basically relining or helping. With
You're not going to do anything about infiltration. That's not your...
Not at this point.
Not at the-
Not as part of this project.
Just wanted to get that straight.
So I think based on the funding requirements, there's a requirement to have a public meeting at the next Water Sewer Commission meeting in February, and then we plan to have a little presentation like this the night of the town meeting.
And by the way, we did encourage Sean Henney to come along as our chief wastewater operator. We also have the member of the Water and Sewer Commission, Baird Morgan, who can probably confirm that we've talked about this issue of replacing the pump stations for quite a while, and I think that not only Sean, but also Bob Berardo and Jack Shedd are all in agreement that it would be a great thing to replace those aging pump stations that require more and more maintenance. Is that fair to say?
The last few years, we've actually had to go in ourselves and replace a lot of the pieces because we were starting to have leaks. We had pump failures, motor failures, they're just getting to the end of their useful life.
Yeah.
The biggest question is how much the users are going to see an increase in their bill. That's
We
going to be the...
we did a projection, and it could be potentially somewhere in the realm of $100 to $200 potentially.
Boy, they're screwing down.
It'd be nice to be able to, time these so that one of the debt services that you're dealing with now kind of goes away, but at this point.
We actually do have a small loan that's being paid off, which will slightly offset that, maybe, because this is the last year of the payments for one of the smaller loans. Excuse me.
We have no indication that we're going to have more users to help pick up the cost. That's...
Right, yeah, this is a replacement of existing equipment.
That's right.
It's not an expansion of any service areas or anything to provide.
Right.
So what's the rate now on sewer right now? About $600 every 6 months?
I think so. I think that's the broad average. It depends on the usage, because obviously there's 6,000 gallons comes with your allotment, and then it's based on your water meter readings as to how much you're paying in terms of sewer. But I can tell you the sewer metered rate is substantially higher than the water metered rate, because the customer base is so small. We only have 250 or so customers on sewer. We have 570 on water. So it's a small number of people in the village who have access to the sewer system, and as a result, they're still dealing with significant overhead and the same costs of doing business, and it's as a result more expensive per person.
There's probably no way of knowing, but in this town, are our sewer charges in line with the average town around the state, or are we kind of getting up on the high end right now?
From what I've heard from Mark, your colleague, water is right in the sweet spot in the middle, maybe on a little bit on the low side, but sewer is higher probably than comparable towns.
Yeah, I imagine so. I mean, the typical, there's really no typical in the state, but, there are some, there are some projects that we've worked on where the sewer charges are in the $1,200 a year range, so it's not out of line. I think from our, and every time that we deal with the funding agencies, they don't necessarily talk about number of connections, they talk about an equivalent user, because you have higher users on the top. The estimate that we had predicted was there was going to be, it's about $700 a year right now.
And as opposed to water, where we're simply delivering the water we get off the mountaintop in Chittenden, in sewer, it's a much more complicated process, which involves chemicals, lots of moving parts and pieces, state regulations, and
Different game.
testing, et cetera. So there's a lot more involved with it.
So I think there's, I don't know the specifics, but in order to be on the ballot in March, there needs to be some type of resolution.
Right, there would be a need for a motion tonight to adopt and approve the proposal to move forward based on the Water and Sewer Commission's recommendation with a bond vote. And I think Chief Hooker needs to sign off on the notice of intent, demonstrating, according to our bond counsel, Paul Giuliani, that we are moving forward, and so we can give notice to the public of the bond vote taking place on town meeting day and with an Australian ballot item on voting day. So that's the packet of materials you have in your packet. They consist of a resolution certificate, which Helen signs, a warning of a special town meeting, which both Tom as chair and Helen as town clerk sign, which have the language of the bond vote. There's the form of the ballot, the official ballot, Town of Pittsford special meeting, March 5, 2019, with the same language, yes or no on the bond. And finally, and a certificate of posting, publication, and vote, which the town clerk signs after she's posted the notice and counted the votes. And then a declaration of official intent of the town of Pittsford to reimburse certain expenses from proceeds of indebtedness. That's again a form that the town clerk signs. But there does need to be in the minutes such a motion and a vote to move forward.
Do we have a motion?
I make the motion that we adopt whatever.
Those documents. I'll work with Kelly to list those.
So that we can move forward with this process. No, that's not it.
That's not it, right? Is that in tonight's packet, Don?
Yeah, it's in there. I read it the other day. It was in.
There's a signature page for you, Tom, on the one thing that you need to sign in the red folder, I believe.
Oh, it's in this one.
I think so. Maybe under the warning, there might be a document that says notice of intent. Yeah, right behind that, Tom.
I gather that the Water and Sewer Board is behind this.
Yes, they have voted and they have seen the presentations maybe several times over. And they don't have any more pleasure in possibly incurring higher rates than you do, but it's a necessary evil to stay on top of maintenance.
I understand.
So we got a motion, we have a second?
I'll second.
We did, second, motion second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it.
I have one more request, if you could just take one more.
Sure.
Because I got
All right.
kids at home, will just take them.
If you kiss my eye.
Oh, we don't want that.
Stand there and hold that up so I
That's for the one.
There aren't many options
No.
that we have.
Right. It'd be negligent to ignore the problem.
Probably the state will be able to act next thing we know.
Undoubtedly.
Oh, yeah?
We never know, but I doubt it because of the time vote sign.
True.
Yes, I think we are. For $970,000, the least we can ask for is a cookie. Yes.
we're talking about, I'm way past the end of the sewer lines and the water lines. So is that, are these costs going to be put on the property bill?
No.
Users, only
Strictly
users.
speaking, these will all be dealt with by users, but because theoretically, if the users failed to pay their bills, the town itself has to provide the backstop. And that's why the board is the one that approves this bond vote. The election is for all of the town's voters as a result of that, because there's theoretically a possibility of some sort of default by the water system and the sewer system. The town is the backstop. That's why all town residents vote on that.
Thank you.
Good question.
Okay. Discussion status of Pittsford first response.
Yes, we've invited some members of Pittsford First Response tonight because we just heard from them.
Thank you for the cookies.
Yes, thank you very much. We just heard from them that they'd like to discuss their relationship with the town and maybe making some changes, so they can probably speak for themselves on that.
Well, didn't have anything ready, but what our thoughts were was to, instead of being a private entity, is to be actually part of the town. The biggest thing nowadays is insurances. Workers' comp is right out of sight. The monies that we get from the town already, most of that goes to insurances. So we thought maybe if the town took it over, or would become part of the town, that it would get with everyone else, it wouldn't be as much. This, tonight, we were just asking if they wanted to put it before the people to see if they would want to do that. The biggest thing right now also would be the facility itself. Apparently, this land is still chartered. So we would have to go to them and see if we could actually.
If I could, I just took a look at this today, and there's a lister's card in tonight's packet, and there's some historical documents that you've looked at, which I think show that there was a transfer from Carter to Pittsford First Response of the land, but there's a clause that says if it stops being used for public service, then he has the right to take the property back. So I think in the past, the town has looked at this possibility, and that was one issue that was being discussed.
Yeah. Much else.
I think a question or two, if I could, Mr. Chairman.
Yeah.
Do you have a way that you pay or compensate your people, or is it strictly volunteer?
It's strictly volunteer.
Would you imagine that continuing?
Yeah.
Okay. And do you fully utilize that building now, or do you think there's any available space for other town functions if we were to talk about that with you?
You should be able to, and that pad on the side of it they put on years ago. It's a shame, that's just sitting there not being used. That could be closed in and could be used for storage, or I think even Chief Warple showed some interest in doing something with that pad.
Right.
In the past, I know, I don't know if I was on the board then or not, but might not have been. Maybe I was. We approached First Response to take over just before we built this garage out back. And that was the intent, was to go ahead and finish that slab
Yeah.
and close it in, and to utilize for the Pittsford police and whatever, as long as they could share the bathroom or whatever and secure it. So I personally think that's a hell of a good idea.
Yeah.
Because I know we're cramped for space over here as it is, and
Even cramped in terms of office space for the police.
there's no question, this is so
Yeah,
that
that'd be enough. Just
You know, possibly
have an office.
you could have an office with the two bays, for the two cars, and an office on one end. And I personally would be in favor of the town taking it over, due to the fact that, number one, the town I personally feel they should be paying for your training, number one. I don't know who pays for your training right now, whether you do personally, out of your fundraising.
Well,
And once you do it in-house.
In-house,
Correct.
I do too.
So, I know what goes into the training part, it's a lot of hours and a lot of time, and it's a lot of expense too. So, for what you guys give the town, guys and gals, it's certainly money well spent, because I know I wouldn't be sitting here tonight. I had a heart attack sitting in that room right there. Well, you drove me to Burlington, so you know. I almost didn't make it. So it's a vital service that I think the town, I'm sure, would support. I know we got my support 100%. I don't know how the rest of the board feels, but.
Tom, was the reason that we didn't do something a few
the
years
time-
ago because of the way that the
Yeah.
title was, the land was set up?
No, that wasn't,
Some of the people
it
in
was,
charge.
it was the personnel in charge, because we went to them, they didn't come to us. It was kind of a reverse situation back then. I approached them and said, can we build that? so that we don't have to build this out here.
Yeah.
And it was flat, no, we don't want any part of you. So that kind of ended the discussion, because I went and talked to Eddie, and he had no problem with it at the time. I don't know how he would feel about it now, but I know at that time, the town was willing to take over the entire maintenance on the building, the electrical, the heat, everything, 100%. And I feel that we'd probably be in the same position today. It's just gonna be another line item, so the fire department's gonna be first response with a bigger budget, so it's gonna be. I don't know if it takes a vote of the townspeople to do this or not, we have to.
It's the beginning of a conversation. I think I probably should do a little tire kicking about what the implications would be.
Right.
We probably would see some lowering of your insurance rates, because if we package it together with the town, probably get some bulk rates from the
Should be
VLCT.
lower rate, I think, because it would come under our umbrella.
But I think that we probably ought to have that conversation with Ed Carter, just to make sure that he's not in any way opposed to it.
Right.
And see if he can write some,
Well, that's what I was thinking, as far as tonight, was just
Yeah.
to see what.
I mean, we need to start somewhere.
Going.
it may take a while to do this, but.
Oh, yeah.
It wasn't too many years ago that we did try to do something,
No,
and
just
and
try
it
to
just kind of
build
fell
this
apart,
one.
never happened. Maybe at this point, there is a chance for a new door to open and move
I
forward.
think that was around 2005, 2006, because I started in 2006, and then we were grumbling about stuff then.
So are you saying you're gonna contact VLCT?
I'll contact VLCT, but also Ed Carter, who has that deed
Yeah, I think we
provision,
have to-
just to make sure that we find
See
it.
on that provision in
Yeah,
the.
that was the Harry have that control now.
Very does?
I don't know.
I think it's still Edward, but I'm not sure.
Yeah,
But I don't know. John and I may contact.
yeah, yeah.
Maybe also you want to explore that we have to have, does it have to go on the ballot? Or
Well,
we
yeah,
make
that
the
was my
decision
question.
here?
Yeah. I don't know.
But if it has to be on the ballot, I think we can make a pretty good
Presentation.
Presentation.
Oh, yeah, support it.
to support it, but I think it's definitely the way to go. You know, just
If
makes
it's
sense.
something that has to be put on the ballot, maybe we've got enough time to do it, so I.
Yeah.
Well, I don't know if we could make this town meeting, because tonight's the night
Maybe we
to
could do a special.
approve it.
We should do a special.
We could always do a special
No, do a special.
ballot
yeah.
on that.
If it's something they feel strong about. Which obviously they do, or they wouldn't be here.
Yeah.
I think it's fair to say we all appreciate the hard
Yeah.
work that
Oh,
you
yeah,
do,
sure.
often thankless, but when you need them, you need them. So thank you for all of that you do.
And there was a point in time here not too long ago, we didn't have too many people responding, so it gets
Coming
scary.
around,
Yeah.
Actually got one fella here tonight.
Yep.
He just passed his practicals, he's gotta take his written test down, and he'll become a
Good.
full member.
Good,
Fantastic.
that's what we need.
Yep.
Well, thank you, gentlemen, for coming, we appreciate it.
We'll be following up with you. Are you the person, the point of contact, you and Melody?
Yeah, you can contact myself, Melody.
Okay.
Actually, you see Sean probably more than
Yep.
you see me.
Right, right,
Whichever way works for you to get the message, you can do it.
okay. Very good.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Bobby.
Thanks, Bob.
Certainly wouldn't want to do without him.
Oh, gosh, no.
No.
That's for sure. Let's see, well, I guess we'll go back to the top. We'll go reverse here.
Yes, there's really been no change because I haven't heard much of any appetite for changes since the last presentation. So what we've got before you is pretty much exactly the same budgets that were presented on the January 2nd meeting. Again, we're looking at an overall increase of 5.9% in terms of a general fund tax increase, but thankfully only a 3.2% increase on the highway fund taxes. Together, the overall tax increase for the year would be 4.7%, which is a little bit lower than last year's increase. As you know, we have a lot of fixed costs that we can't do anything about, and we've tried to be as transparent about that as possible with all of the previous presentations. And we need to get an approval of the budgets so that we can also approve the town warning that features those budget numbers so that we can timely post them before town meeting day.
What's your pleasure on the budget?
Looks good to me. I don't have any, I wish it was lower. But we had some extenuating circumstances that kicked that back up this time, and hopefully.
And I'd point out too, that we've held the line here since I've been on the board, for
Yeah.
the last 5-6 years
Yeah.
to a bare minimum. I mean, we've really,
Yeah.
we've trimmed stuff, and there comes a point in time you can only cut it so much, and then it comes back. Yeah, we've level funded, so.
Up till last year.
Yep, to last year, and it's like, pretty soon that comes back to bite you in the butt, unfortunately.
Yeah, our fund balances on general fund and other fund are pretty bare bones now.
Bare bones, at one time we had a cushion of 700,000, and now all of a sudden that's we've been offsetting it, and it's time we need to fess up, I guess. So I guess I need a motion to pass the budget
Accept
as
the budget.
proposed.
I'll make the motion to accept the budget as it's written, to be placed on the ballot.
I'll second that.
Motion's been made and seconded. Any further discussion? If not, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Passes.
Once again, Hank Pelkey is off the hook.
Yes. Yeah, it says, I don't have a vote on the budget. Don't give me the dickens. And the warning, we need to drop the warning.
Yes, the warning basically factors in these budget figures and talks about the fact that it's time to renew the 5-year cycle of tax exemptions for the Pittsford Historical Society, and I believe the Pittsford First Response Building as well. And there's only one new special appropriation, and that's in the amount of $500. It remains to be seen whether these folks will show up at town meeting to advocate on behalf of their request, but we have put it on the ballot per their request.
With the Vermont Family Network.
That's right.
Is that a duplication of services in any way, shape, or form that we already have in town?
I think that would be the first question that anybody at town meeting should be asking now.
We'll ask
And
them.
is it, or don't we know?
I can't tell from the packet, the information they gave me, but it was the board's request to
Yeah.
add it, with them having to advocate for it at town meeting. So,
So how would you know if there's a duplication of funds or requests?
well, we have a further
If you
here.
can't tell,
Yeah.
what's the general public going to be able to see?
I think they're going to be able to ask the representative from the family network, the family group, as to what do you do, and how does it help the people of Pittsford, and is it duplicative of any other
But there
special
are people that-
appropriations?
There are groups on there that do stuff like that.
Right. I mean, if you'd like, I can certainly give the representative a reminder, A, to be here, and second, to be prepared to talk about.
If he's not here, I'm sure we get turned down.
Absolutely
Well,
right, absolutely right. And when I spoke to them, they couldn't be 100% sure they would send someone down. So that's their poor decision-making.
It's pretty hard to believe that with all the different things we support, that there isn't some duplication in some ways, in some
Well, that
forms.
is.
I think skepticism is appropriate.
Can you send me the warning?
Yes. Yeah.
So what's your pleasure on the town running?
I'll let somebody else go first.
You're looking for a vote,
I'm looking for-
warning as it is.
Yes, and then signatures.
Signatures.
I'll make that motion.
Make a motion, John, motion to accept the warning.
Second.
Can you second it? Okay, we got a motion second, any further discussion? If hearing none, all those in favor say aye. Those opposed say nay. Ayes have it.
One of those things you gotta have.
Yeah. Mike's not here, so. last thing we've got is discussion, a brief discussion on the litigation, and then we'll go into executive session and really discuss it before we come out. and take
Because, yes, it is a legal matter, and you
It's a
probably want to
legal
discuss
matter,
the
and,
pros and
yeah.
cons of the
that
proposal.
we did have a mediation.
January 8th,
January
Tuesday.
8th in Rutland.
6
Last week,
hours or
about
so.
6 hours, along with the Otter Valley Unified Board. We did come to an agreement, so we'll be discussing that agreement and see if we can get full board signatures. Once it's all signed, it's be done.
Yeah, if all three parties to the
All three
litigation,
parties
the
need to-
trustees, the town,
trustees,
and the school
and
district, school board.
Unified Board.
Yep. If all three approve it, then it becomes
Then
effective.
it becomes effective.
So,
And we were all in agreement when we left. The trustees, the select board, and the OVUHS board.
okay.
So with that said, I think
Did you
that,
table the fire warden?
oh gosh, no, I forgot. Yes, we do have that.
We have been operating with an acting
Right.
fire warden for several months, and it
Yeah.
seemed appropriate to take the next step, which was to elevate him to the status of
To the warden,
fire warden.
and that would be Bradley Keith.
Need a motion?
Yep.
Okay.
Is this a paid or?
No.
Volunteer?
He's reimbursed for mileage, and there's, I think, a $5 permit
Per-
fee.
permit.
But it's mostly the
We're gonna
mileage.
break the budget, Joe. You do that.
I make a motion that we appoint Bradley Keith as our permanent fire warden.
Second.
We have a motion made and seconded. Any further discussion? If not, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? No. Bradley's your fire warden.
Great. Before you go to executive session, I meant to bring up one other thing, and if it's too late to do so, I'd ask that we put it on next meeting's agenda, but, well, there was, John, in this packet, you had a couple of things, quite a bit of discussion on the reconstruction of the section going into Omea, west
Oh,
of
yes.
Whipple Hollow Road.
Hollow Road,
And then
Crawford Road.
possibly doing another section of West Creek Road. If we can have some discussion,
Absolutely.
I'd just like to bring it.
Absolutely. I had just developed the draft, knowing that I wouldn't need it for several more weeks before I go out to bid.
Right.
But I wanted you to get a chance to look at it. If you want to comment on it, we'd be happy to do it. We're going to have Chad here at the next meeting anyway to discuss the other matters, so it makes sense to have it on the agenda.
Yeah, you can wait till then.
No, go ahead.
Well, as far as the part from the underpass to Omea,
Right.
I wanted to ask the board, the railroad tracks have just been reconstructed in the last 2 or 3 years.
Years,
Markowski Excavating did
Right,
that.
they did those.
And they did the approach on both sets of tracks back quite a distance. Do we tear all that back out and redo it, or is there a portion there that?
That was not my intention, but that should be probably made more clear in the.
Should be made more clear,
Yeah.
to leave those
Not to
approaches.
disturb that.
Yeah,
no,
because there's
those are
probably
fine.
40 feet on each side of the tracks
Good point.
that have been reconstructed already, dug down,
Yep.
filled in with new fill and whatnot.
Very good.
And the other part that I wanted to bring up on that same section was that, if you probably, all of you don't remember, but when Sean Erickson was here and we first started discussing that, the far west end of that section of road, in fact, it's beyond Omea's entrance. There's a culvert there that goes diagonally across the road, and it's really sunk in, and quite a dip. And Sean recommended that we replace that when and if we ever do that section.
That should be part of the project.
It should be part of the project to include that.
To include that culvert.
It looks like it needs doing, just because it's really sinking.
Makes sense if you're gonna be there.
If you're gonna do that,
I appreciate that.
That's
Thank
why
you.
we decided a couple
didn't remember that.
projects together. Mike.
Well, we're gonna at least bid them and see what the numbers are. Hopefully we can do both.
Yeah, hopefully do them both.
And-
is-
the part on West Creek Road, I see you've only written that down for digging down 18 inches. And I thought we were talking about going down a minimum of 3 to 4 feet. but I could be wrong.
I saw that, I was gonna say, I thought that was a little bit skippy.
It is.
It's over there, I think when he did the road,
Maybe would you have in mind that the same approach that was used in the prior stretch of West Creek Road would be used
Which is
here?
3 to 4 feet.
Well, let me confirm that, I'll give you that one as well, you can compare.
I saw that.
That's a good
You know,
one.
it just makes sense with
I agree.
with the court right there,
Yeah.
the stone is a stone's throw away, for lack of a better term.
I agree that it should be consistent with what we did previously, so I'll see if I can pull that
So
previous.
Yeah.
boy, you've got no base left at all.
There's no base left at all. I just think 18 inches won't amount to a snowball in hell.
I think you're right.
Another question that comes to my mind is, the road that goes across the railroad tracks up over the hill where it comes to the other road we talked about.
Depot?
Talked about widening that intersection.
Oh, the truck road.
That's where,
Tearing off that kind of a hump, which may turn out to be a ledge, we
Right,
don't know. I
that's
guess.
right, that's right.
it is a ledge.
Isn't that something that our own crew could attempt to do at
Oh,
least?
absolutely, I can't imagine why we wouldn't at least explore it in-house before we see what the problem
Seems
is.
like
If it's
that
ledge,
little project
has
could
a
be done in-house.
Markowski may come in
At least attempt to do it.
for 6 hours with a hammer
Yeah.
on an excavator.
This is when the videographer goes nuts and wants one conversation.
I know, but we were talking about, when we did that intersection, putting a stop sign at Markowski's, come the other way, not have the truck stop.
Oh, okay,
I don't know,
yes.
on the other coming in, not a yield, but a stop sign.
Yeah, coming off from West Creek
West Creek
Road.
Road. From
Where
north.
West Creek intersection
Where
with
West
the
Creek
truck
and the
route.
truck route, put a stop sign there.
Yeah.
And that way-
Dave knows that road probably better than I do, and
Because they have a stop sign,
What's your thoughts
some
on it,
people
Dave?
said no.
Well, yeah, but that's the dangerous part. The dangerous part is trying to go down West Creek Road.
yeah,
Coming from Omea, coming into that intersection, because that guy has those bushes right beside the road, you cannot see until you go way around the corner and then have to cut back.
Yeah.
So that's the dangerous part.
Dave, what they're talking about doing there is moving that road over a little bit towards Markowski's, at the very end of the truck route.
Right.
It's gonna,
The whole road
the whole road's gonna
A wider
widen out.
turn.
And a bigger turn, because they're gonna take where they tore the house down and take out some of that banking
Okay, well,
and let the road.
but still, if you could get rid of those stupid
That's-
bushes,
yeah.
copper nails,
Yep.
just saying.
I know nothing.
People with very little privacy, hold on to
Yeah, I
it.
know, we'll do.
It's, you know, it's dangerous if you're coming and trying to go down West Creek.
Oh, yeah.
Heading north, you're talking,
Heading north.
onto West Creek.
Onto West, yeah, from West Creek
But
to West.
they've considered the traffic volume though, compared to the traffic going to Omea versus people crossing. And having those big trucks stop, having a stop
understand.
sign there,
Yeah.
it would be, you know,
Yeah.
I'm sure.
Well, we've got an estimate of 400 trucks a day
Yeah.
use that road,
Yeah.
between Casella's,
Yeah.
Florence
That's a lot of,
State.
a lot of stopping, a lot of stopping.
We
can need
A lot of stopping.
something.
Oh, yeah, we,
So as soon as the weather's better, they're gonna do an exploration of that possible ledge situation. And if it's not something else.
Omea may help us do this, who knows?
Absolutely,
I'm
and
sure
similarly, we may talk to them about some break on our stone costs
Yeah,
for these
possibly.
projects right close to Omea.
it's right,
Absolutely.
right in
Makes
their
sense.
backyard.
Right.
Yeah, it is.
But look into those approaches
Yeah.
on the railroad tracks. I don't think.
I agree with you, if they're doing well, they're brand new,
Yeah.
why would we want to disturb them?
Oh, yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Those are the only smooth ones in town.
Yes, the ones closer up to Route 7 are
Well,
terrible.
the truck route is.
Oh, yeah.
And they just redid that too, but they didn't do it the same method.
Right.
The same people didn't do it.
Yeah.
They didn't.
But if you could also look into including that culvert on the west end
Yes.
of that, that
Yep.
would make sense.
Absolutely.
Couple things, the depth and the.
And that's why we put these things out there, so you can look them over and comment. Appreciate that.
Anything else?
No, that's
You
it.
all set? We thank everybody for coming tonight. This concludes our open session.